Hi, we're from Pomona High School, and today we're going to be talking about the poem Cut by Sylvia Plath. All right, so first, I'd like to talk about the plot of the poem, right? I think that's important, like what happened, right? Because it's a very simplistic plot, but I think that helps us to interpret. Daniel, what's the plot of the poem?
Well, I'm assuming she's just writing about her experience. So Sylvia, it seems that she's cutting onions, and she accidentally misses and cuts her thumb.
So she cuts her thumb while she's cutting onions. Now, the question is, he says it's accidental. Is it accidental? What words could we look at that would suggest that it is an accident? And what words or phrases would suggest that it is not an accident?
I don't think it's an accident because she uses in the very first line thrill, like she's getting like euphoria out of this, being like, oh, I'm so rushed with that.
So you think she enjoys it?
Yes, but it might have been an accident, but she could still be enjoying it.
Okay. All right.
If we're going throughout the whole entire poem, she uses specific words that put her in control, such as straight from the heart, I step on it. And I really think that those specific lines and actions that are her own really outline that it is not an accident and that she is taking control in the situation by cutting herself.
Okay. Levi.
Yeah, just the whole thing seems kind of violent. Like she's, I am ill, I've taken a pill to kill. So it just seems like she's trying to hurt herself in a way.
Okay. Mariah?
And I agree with all that, and she even says the celebration this is, so I feel like she's just really, pumped about it.
A celebration this is, yeah. And that can connect us back up to that word thrill, right? Because you would be thrilled at a celebration. So I think that we can talk about either interpretation. I like to go with the fact that this is not an accident, that she has done this on purpose. She's done it to herself because something going on with her mental state, something going on with her physiology. She has cut herself on purpose. Daniel, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I did see a little bit of some evidence that shows that it wasn't, but I wasn't sure if that was what. Yeah, okay. Well, it talks about instead, and I feel like that does have kind of a meaning of accidental, because she was cutting onions, but I don't know.
Instead.
Like if she wanted to cut her thumb, I feel like she could have just done it without the onions.
I think that that line doesn't specifically mean that she was cutting onions. Maybe so much as relating herself and her own flesh to something so simple as an onion, because that's all she really sees it as in her mental state. She just doesn't see it as very significant.
And I think it's funny, after she cuts herself, she kind of, the next stanza goes into detail of what it looks like. It seems like it happens, and then she kind of just looks at it. And
she is very fascinated with the fact that there's blood coming out of her thumb, right? And she goes to great lengths to describe this action of, I mean, it's a simple poem, right? Like there's not a lot going on, but it's the imagery that makes it deeper.
Yeah.
I think initially she cut herself on accident because she was cutting an onion, and then she kind of likes the pain. Like when people cut themselves, they kind of get addicted to it. I think she just she kind of got an adrenaline rush, and she realized that she kind of enjoyed the pain, but at first it was an accident.
Okay, thank you. Nick.
Going off before when you were talking about how if she did it on purpose, it might have been because of a mental illness. I want to jump down to where it says, "Homunculus, I am ill. I have taken a pill to kill." I think that the ill is saying that she is depressed, that she's mentally ill, and she has taken a pill to kill, and maybe not sort of a pill like arsenic to kill herself, but maybe a pill to kill the depression, so like antidepressants. So this is just maybe one way of
dealing with the pain. Yeah. Lauren?
With that, going on with that, I totally agree. I loved focusing in on the word homunculus in this because it is both, as Nick told me before, the human-like creature with body parts based on their sensory, and it is that hand part, that sensory piece that she cut, as well as it is a piece of the brain related to action and feeling, and so she's saying that part of me is ill at the same time as relating it to the sensory.
Very good.
I was looking at stanza 8 where it says, "The stain on your gauze, Ku Klux Klan." And it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of comparing the gauze that she uses to bandage her thumb as, like, to the Ku Klux Klan. What does the Ku Klux Klan were, like, these people who terrorized black people and a lot of people, and it was for political stuff, but they caused a lot of blood. So how is she what does she mean by, like, comparing her
Josh,
thumb and gauze to
Josh
people?
brings up a good point because there's a lot of historical references
Oh, yeah,
in this
definitely.
poem, right? Like, let's identify some of the other historical references, and then let's try and see what they all have in common. But first, let's talk about what are the other historical references in the poem. Nick.
Third stanza, it says the Indian axed your scalp. It's talking probably about the European intrusion into the Americas.
And it says the word little pilgrim.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, very good. Mariah.
It says 1,000,000 soldiers run, redcoats everyone.
So, historical event would be the Revolutionary War, right? Okay.
It also says the thin papery feeling, saboteur, kamikaze man, referencing to World War II.
World War II and kamikaze pilots.
Mhm.
And then we have the Ku Klux Klan, which Josh brought up. What event would that primarily be connected to?
Civil War, probably.
Or civil rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, civil rights movement maybe. So now we have these four historical events. What do they all have in common?
What I think is really interesting is it's kind of in order of, like, when they happen.
Okay.
And then they're all events that are really bloody and all war-like or violent. And
They
so-
are very violent, right? And they do go in order, right? That's a
Well,
good
chronologically.
kind of.
No, the kamikaze man comes before Ku Klux Klan, but
Yeah.
although Ku Klux Klan is kind of a continuation, it still exists.
Yeah.
there, but-
Still goes on. Yeah. Missy.
Well, following up on that, I do think that it is really violent. And the thing I noticed is that during these things, I've noticed like a lot of blood was shed in all of these
Mhm.
little actions, and so I think she's using that to tie back to the cut as she was describing
Mhm.
all the blood coming out. And I feel like that's why she uses so many of these like horrific and violent historical events to like emphasize that.
Good. Daniel.
So I also thought that it was interesting when she was talking about redcoats everyone, and I think that might have something to do with like how the Revolutionary War, you couldn't maybe tell like what color they were because of the blood, especially because it says whose side are they on, because if everyone's a redcoat, it means their uniforms are probably like all stained in blood.
Okay.
I just wanted to connect why she was using all of these violent things in history to this poem, because it's obviously about what she's feeling inside of herself after this cut. And I just think knowing and having some background on Sylvia Plath, that it is actually, she's relating all of the violence to the violence inside her own mind.
And I mean, it can be, we can look at it as this is Sylvia Plath talking about her inner struggle, but it could be anyone's inner struggle, right? Like, we could make this more universal. It could be anyone in our class's inner struggle. It could be anyone out in the world's inner struggle. Julian.
I just wanted to mention that, like, the kamikaze was, like, when they, like, killed themselves, when they, like, hit. So I don't know if that's, like, relevant to, like, the depression or something.
I think that's totally relevant. Good.
Yeah.
Levi.
I think it's interesting here in the second stanza from the bottom. It says, "The balded pulp of your heart confirms its mill of silence," and that just kind of gives me, like, in my head when I think of it, as almost like she's talking about herself and how she's looking at her thumb. It's just kind of like cold. She's kind of a blank face, doesn't even realize what she's done. She's kind of sitting there, just looking. Kind of doesn't matter to her.
So we're quickly running out of time, and I want to finish up by talking about the theme of the poem. Right? So what could we say? What's the message that Sylvia Plath wants us to get out of Cut? Because I think we can get stuck in the story of the poem and what's happening, and sometimes with this one we don't go into the greater what's happening. What's the theme? So what do we think? What's the theme of this poem, Lauren?
I think, like what you brought up before, Sylvia Plath is relating this inner struggle to everyone, and everyone having this inner struggle and having it be violent and crazy, but okay.
So in the end, it's all right. Mariah?
I agree with what Lauren said, and I also think that it's just like, I don't know, it's just to show, like, compare, like, it to other things, since it is such a political poem that, like, it's, like, been going on for a while, and I feel like that's why she uses that kind of stuff too, so.
Good point, good point. Levi?
I think it kind of ties into depression and self-harm, because at the very end it says, how you jumped, tramped veteran, dirty girl, thumb stump. It kind of says how, like, she hurt herself all this way, and at the end it says, like, that's a bad thing to do.
Yeah, that dirty girl is the line that is very interesting, I think. Yeah. But my timer has said that we're out of time. Good job today. Bye.
Like and subscribe.